Welcome to Straight Outta Health IT. Getting into health tech is rough, but here's an unfiltered dialogue of healthcare leaders and influencers covering a wide variety of issues affecting healthcare and the health tech industry. And now your host, Christopher Cunny.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Straight Outta Health IT, where we dive into the intersections of health, technology, and innovation. I'm your host, Christopher Cunny, and today we're addressing a very critical topic that I think is, quite honestly, sneaking up on everyone right now, and it's this whole issue around aging and the number of individuals who are now moving into their senior years. And I, being the last generation of the baby boomers, just turned 60 myself. And so I can appreciate the challenges that exist as we age, the challenges I dealt with my own family, mother, father, and loved ones who are moving into their senior years. In fact, I'm hosting my 92-year-old aunt for Christmas this year as well, too. And so we all are having to deal with the fact that the population is aging rapidly, and there are significant implications associated with that today. And so my guest, Alex Mihailidis, is the scientific director of AgeWell, Canada's Technology and Aging Network, and professor at the University of Toronto. His work focuses on developing technology that supports older adults in maintaining independent and quality lives as they age. Alex, welcome to the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Christopher, for having me.
Happy to have you here. Before we get started, sound like a broken record for those who listen to my podcasts all the time, but I always ask my guests to take a few minutes and just share your own personal story, your personal journey. What led you down the path of focusing in on aging and specifically age tech? And give us a little bit of that background.
Yeah, I love to share a story. I actually like to tell a story whenever I give a presentation, just really to set the context, because I think unlike many people in this area, when I got into this 25 years ago now, I really had no connection to older adults,
Sure.
aged parents, dementia. I graduated from engineering. I actually trained to be an aerospace engineer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And when I graduated, there were no jobs essentially in aerospace. So I decided to go back to school and to do my master's. And during that time, I actually had a chance meeting a fellow engineer. And I didn't know this person beforehand. And, we just started talking, and, we didn't talk about engineering or anything.
Sure.
What we talked about was his role as a caregiver to his wife. So his wife had very early onset Alzheimer's in her mid-50s. And he was telling me about all the challenges and stresses of being a caregiver and having to provide care, keep her at home as much as possible, always having to be with her to provide prompts and reminders, the things that she needed to do during her self-care activities. And, in this conversation, he became quite emotional about it, really just about the embarrassment of it all and how it was not, and it was embarrassing for both of them. She knew what was going on, and he knew, obviously, providing the care. And during that conversation, he said, wouldn't it be great if a computer could do all this for us?
Oh, interesting.
So this was back in, 1996.
Right. Quite some
so
time.
Well before we. And so that idea kind of stuck with me for a couple of weeks. And then I went to my supervisor for my master's at that point and said, I want to build a computer and try to see what artificial intelligence can do to basically provide prompts to older adults with dementia during self-care activities. And my supervisor back there and my mentor, Dr. Jeff Fernie, was open-minded enough that he said, sure, let's give it a try.
That's great.
And, that's how I started doing it. And I continued that for my PhD and postdoc, and as I say, the rest is history now. So so it really was a chance meeting that got me into this whole area.
How interesting. Well, first of all, I commend you for having the foresight of seeing the possibility of how technology could impact this specific challenge that exists as we start moving into those senior years and all the potential issues associated with that, like dementia and other not only mental but physical challenges that people deal with going forward. And that actually leads me into kind of the broader conversation, this global aging crisis and really the opportunity for innovation. And so you actually did a great job in framing the conversation by giving a personal story, but let's just share also a little bit. I would actually expound on it too, what's happening globally. We're seeing a rapidly aging population, and according to the UN, by 2050, people age 60 and over will make up over 20% of the global population, one fourth of the population. Can you talk about some of those major challenges we face in healthcare and daily living as the population continues to rapidly age?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And those demographic changes are not unique to one part of the world, right?
Right.
We're seeing them in countries such as US and Canada and in Asia and also in, the global south, things like that.
Sure.
So, this is a worldwide trend and a worldwide issue that we all need to be focusing on, and really thus makes it, one of the true unique grand challenges that's out there. And again, the situations that I'll describe are not unique to just to our own country,
That's
but around
right.
the world. And, one of the biggest issues, obviously, is the cost that is to provide healthcare to our aging population.
Right.
A significant proportion of our GDP and our healthcare dollars around the world go towards supporting older adults. And
Exactly.
the question is, can we continue to sustain that purely using the models that we have right now in our respective countries?
Right.
And clearly, there's
And we both know the answer to
shown.
that question, right? It's
Yeah,
no.
exactly. No,
No, we can't.
uh,
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. And the other issue too that we're seeing is older people, especially the new demographics, so the baby boomers,
Hmm.
they have very specific ideas of how they want to age,
That's
right?
right.
And where they want to grow old. And a lot of that is in their own homes, their own communities,
Right.
with their
Very
friends,
independent.
family around them. The problem with that, though, is there's fewer and fewer caregivers out there to provide care. And
That's right.
I'm talking about the family units. And so there's fewer people to look after them. Here in Canada and again around the world, it's not unheard of that you have kids living in Vancouver, 5,000 kilometers or 3,000 miles away from their parents in Toronto,
Right.
trying to provide care to them, right?
That's
Trying to
right.
manage their doctor appointments, try to manage home care, home modifications, etc. And this is also becoming more and more challenging, obviously. And this is really where technology or age tech really can start to be a tool to help fill these gaps and not a replacement for family care.
No,
Never
no.
talk about technology as a
Sure.
replacement, but a tool, one of many, right? That family caregivers and older people can be using to help overcome these issues, and that our governments can be using to fill the gaps that are currently existing in healthcare.
No, I completely agree. And, you think about countries like China, for example, by 2050, 500 million people will be,
Mhm.
65 or older. I mean, that's just to your
Yeah,
point, not enough of the population to sustain the healthcare for those individuals or to even just have people trained to take care of that aging population as well. And we see that here
absolutely.
in the United States being one of the most expensive healthcare systems in the world. We are challenged even more so with creating a sustainable model for healthcare as this population ages. Not to mention, many of those folks who are moving into those senior years are healthcare professionals themselves. And so they're
Yeah,
leaving the
absolutely.
healthcare profession exactly
Mhm.
aging, and we don't have the resources to your point to replace them. And so you touched on a really key point that technology is an enabler. And so I'm just curious, what types of innovations are you seeing in age tech and that are helping address some of these gaps that exist today?
So I would say the number one type of technology we're seeing right now are smart home systems.
Hmm.
And, these are things that can monitor the environmental conditions of the home, can provide reminders, to your parents if you're
Sure.
providing care to them. Essentially ensuring that the environment is safe, the house is safe, that your loved ones are safe. Again, through very common sensors that you can go pick up right now at any of your
Right.
big box stores, right? It's a matter of just putting the technologies together in order to develop something.
Mhm.
One story I also like to share is, so now I am a caregiver to my parents who are, my mom's in her late 80s. My dad is turning 90 this January. And the interesting thing is, being in age tech, I like to use their house as a little
Right.
bit of a test bed and
A lab, huh?
install some sensors. Yeah.
Exactly.
But the most useful one actually is their smart washer and dryer,
Oh, interesting.
because I get a notification on the app whenever my mom turns on the washing machine
Hmm.
or does the dryer and when the drying cycle is complete, etc. And I know she does their laundry every Saturday morning.
Right.
And if I see all of a sudden that she's not doing her laundry on a Saturday morning, then that gives me pause to
Right.
to
What happened?
pick up the phone and kind of see what's going on, because
Sure.
there's something out of the ordinary with the routine. So there's a lot of these smart home technologies and appliances that already exist out there. A lot of it is just educating people on one, that it can be used for this purpose. Yeah, they're not maybe age tech in the
Right.
classic definition, but they can be used.
They gives you
in a care-
indicators, right? Indicators
Exactly.
to someone's behavior, right? And they're not
Yeah,
that intrusive either. It's not like big brother's watching me. Somebody's got a camera on me all day long, following me and
yeah,
watching my personal activities. But it is monitoring my behavior, and that behavior
yeah,
then will be an indication of whether or not I need to your point, touch base and say, "Hey, mom,
exactly,
I'm just checking up on you,
exactly.
making sure you're
Yeah,
okay." Without
exactly.
feeling like you're again babying them or making them feel like
Hmm. Hmm.
they're not able to live an independent life.
Hmm.
That's great. Any other technologies are you seeing that are emerging right now in this space?
Yeah, so we are starting to see now a bit of a boom, I would say, around the use of robotics.
Yeah.
And, if we talked 3, 5 years ago, I would still say, robotics is still very much science fiction
Right.
in terms of cost and usefulness. But things are starting to change. You can go buy these little robots again at your
Hmm.
big box stores or wherever it may be now for hundreds of dollars only. And a lot of them are actually doing quite effective work with respect to socialization and again providing information to your loved ones. And so I think that's really, I think, where we're going to see the next big thing happen in the next 5 years is the use of social and personal robots in people's homes. So they may not be carrying people around and lifting off the toilet like we kind of still see in the research world, but
Right, right.
more of those social, more of those cognitive kind of activities, I can see robotics playing a large role.
No, to your point, one of the biggest challenges as you age is loneliness, right? And it is
Hmm.
it's the mental health. It's not just the physical aspect, but the mental health.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
robotic technologies, virtual care technologies, things of that nature can help to address those issues, especially someone dealing with dementia and other challenges as well too. How can these technologies help to support them
Hmm.
as they go through that journey in life as well?
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about the role of Age Well and the collaboration in age tech.
Right. So AgeWell was started back in 2015 through, at that time, our Canadian government had a program called the Networks of Centers of Excellence. And the goal of that program really was to bring together the best and brightest in a particular field where Canada was lagging behind the rest of the world, and
Right.
really to help, establish Canada and its partners and its researchers as a world leader. And, so back then, we did have a growing community of researchers and industry partners and policymakers in the area of age tech, but we were kind of all over the place.
Hmm.
And so we decided that we needed some kind of backbone to bring everyone together. And so we applied for one of these networks, and we were
Right.
successful at that point. And that's been going on right now till we just wrapping up our final year as a network of center of excellence. And
No, that's great.
the whole goal of AgeWell, was not to develop the technologies or to commercialize technologies, but to provide the resources, the partnerships, the
Mhm.
means for others in this field to come
Sure.
together and work collaboratively. And probably most important is to bring the voices of older adults and caregivers into the mix as well. And that's one thing that we are very proud of, that, we did not fund any project that doesn't have older adults and or caregivers as a meaningful equal partner of the research team. They often go on and be co-authors on
Right.
papers, in fact. And so that's really the goal of AgeWell, was to develop the community of these researchers and these partners to help accelerate the development and hopefully the commercialization of age tech. The other big aspect was to train the future leaders in this area as
Right.
well. So age tech, we put, I think, close to 2,000 trainees through our various training programs, not training them to be academics per se or researchers,
Hmm.
but to maybe go work in industry, perhaps to
Sure.
go
Innovators.
work in government, be
Right.
policies. Yeah. And in fact, the 60 some odd startup companies that come out of AgeWell, I would say more than half were actually led by students
Oh, interesting.
who saw that as the pathway that they want to follow. So,
Right. No, I tell you, I had the privilege and honor of meeting you up in Edmonton, Alberta, about a month or so ago at conference summit, where I had a chance to meet a number of different people from all sorts of backgrounds, seniors that were
mhm,
trying to tackle this problem themselves through technology, folks as young as 18 years old who were building technologies in this space, and
yeah,
just a whole host of individuals who not only just, computer technology, but there was a lady that actually created this fabric that allowed you to move people around easier and for them to sleep better at night and things of that nature. So it's just a wide variety of types of technologies, games that were helping people dealing with things like dementia. So I was very impressed with the work that's taking place in Canada and worldwide as well in this space. Talk to us a little bit about that conference and what spurred
Yeah.
the development of that event.
Yeah. So, AgeWell would hold an annual conference every year and really to show off, the research that our researchers and our trainees and our companies have been conducting in the area of age tech. envisAGE is a brand new initiative. It's been around now for a couple of years. That
Right.
was, again, funded by our federal government. And that's between AgeWell and one of our partners based in Quebec called the MedTech Plus. And envisAGE came together because what we realized is AgeWell, we did a fantastic job of filling the pipeline in terms of great innovations in age tech,
Sure.
but we weren't able to get them out into the real world.
Exposure.
So
Yeah.
envisAGE was funded essentially just to set up across Canada what we call beachheads. So
Right.
basically they're beyond living labs, but not quite in the stores yet. But
Mm-hmm.
really that opportunity now to take the innovations within the AgeWell pipeline, move them along and get them even closer to commercialization. And so the envisAGE forum, which was part of the AgeWell conference this year, again, really showed off, what's been happening in that network. And in fact, this was a really special one because we announced the first cohort of projects that envisAGE will be funding,
Right.
again, taken out of the AgeWell pipeline, and that will have access now to these beachheads across Canada and to national and international partners in the space. They're looking to either license the technology, move the technology forward along a different commercialization path. And so it really was a special meeting this year where, as you said, we actually got to see things. And
Right.
it was quite amazing, as you said, to see the range of products.
Yeah.
The range of individuals. You mentioned the
Yeah.
18-year-olds that are doing fall detection. These
Yeah.
they're just featured in our national newspaper here because these 18-year-olds are actually living in a retirement home.
Yes, they are. Mm-hmm.
Full time. And,
Right.
they're spending Christmas with them. I just met
Yeah.
them last week.
Oh, nice.
And, this is, I think, thanks again to the kind of the ethos of AgeWell and envisAGE and others about, really getting to know your client at the end of the day.
No, absolutely. And I'm just so impressed with their commitment too. They could be focused, they're smart, bright young folks, and they could be focused on a dozen other different things that are probably more in line with their own personal interests. But they saw the need to, step in and innovate and address the issues for older adults. And again, I was very impressed with not only them, but just the eclectic group of individuals who are part of that movement. And as an American here, watching what's happening in Canada, we need to take notes from what you guys are doing and the type of collaborations and partnerships that you're building there as well. So as we kind of wrap up things, Alex, looking forward, what do you see the next frontier for age tech, and what are some of those, we talked a little bit about it, but maybe you can expand a little bit more. What are some of the emerging technologies that you see on the horizon? And then what do you think also are still some of the challenges that exist as we continue on this path?
Yeah. So, I think we're going to see an increase in the role of artificial intelligence and, an increase in things like large language models or chat GPT as, people are more commonly, know about. So, greater intelligence being built into these systems and the ability for these technologies to learn more about us. And it's great that we have technologies that can detect a fall or that can detect, a UTI in an older person or something. But really the holy grail in this whole area is prediction. We want to predict these things before they actually happen and put the right intervention in place. And I think that is the next frontier and where we're all moving towards is how do we predict someone who's going to be at a high risk of falling when the intervention in place? How do we predict change in someone's cognition before that change actually happens and put the right intervention in place? I mean, that's what really excites me is, the fact that we've come such a long way from when I started 25 years ago. Couldn't even possibly, think about being able to predict these things in people, and the fact that the sensors exist.
That's right.
Just from your wearable devices or or smartwatches or whatever it may be. That the technology now exists and allowing us to do these things that I never thought would be possible, when I
That's
got in the
big.
field myself, or even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I think that's really where we're headed. And I think that's where we need to go with this population. And obviously, if we can do that with older adults, we can do that for anyone.
That's
And I
right.
think that's, maybe the final thing I'll mention, in terms of where we're going is getting rid of the word age tech.
Right.
Smart, smart,
The
smart
smart tech.
homes and robots that, I adopt in my 30s and grows
Sure.
with me, and my house changes as I change, right?
That's
It
right.
really becomes an essential part of my life.
Absolutely.
That's really what we should be striving for.
Yeah, someone said something at the summit, the forum, that it said, the day you're born, you're aging. And so when you think about aging is something that we're all dealing with, at different
Yeah.
degrees, different levels in our life. And so how you manage that, determines how well you age
Yeah,
as you go forward
exactly.
in life as well, too. So to your point, those technologies
Yeah.
can have a huge impact at the very early stages and throughout our life cycle, because the reality of it, if we're blessed to live long, healthy, long lives, we're going to have a myriad of challenges and opportunities
Mm-hmm.
associated with that. Well, it's been such a pleasure, Alex. As we wrap up the conversation, any key takeaways you'd like to leave with our listeners? And if someone wanted to reach out to you to learn more about what you're doing within the institutions you're working with, how would they reach you as well?
Yeah. So I think, some takeaway messages is the technology is here. Age tech is a field that exists, that's growing. It's no longer science fiction, the things we're
Right.
talking about. But, as I say to my students, especially my engineering computer science students, the technology is the easy part here.
Hmm.
We can build you a
Yes.
cooler, better robot anytime, but
Right.
it's the education, it's the policy piece. It's figuring out how do we get these things in the hands of people. And that's why, H tech, we need all the disciplines involved. It's not just the technical ones or STEM, we need the social scientists, we need the humanities, we need policy, we need law, et cetera. And so I really encourage, students and others from other fields to bring what their skill set to this area, because it's going to be needed, and it's going to be needed more and more as we continue to try to solve this problem. In terms of how to reach out, go to the AgeWell website, www.agewell-nce.ca. They can Google me online, get my email address. Feel free to reach out. We always love hearing from people, especially older adults and caregivers with their own stories. So, it's been fantastic. It's been such a great pleasure to talk with you, Christopher.
Thank you so much, Alex, and thank you for your foresight. Almost 3 decades ago now,
Yeah.
in seeing where
It's definitely showing.
Well, trust me, you live long enough, it shows on us all, right? Thank you so much for your leadership, your foresight, what you're doing to cultivate this, again, this very diverse group of individuals who are looking at this challenge that we have, from the youngest folks to the senior folks who are part of addressing this challenge. We really appreciate all you're doing. And again, we got to have you back on too, to continue to keep us updated. And I'm actually having that 18-year-old and his team on my podcast as well too.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. I'm so impressed with those folks, and as well as the older lady who's got the fabric technology as well too. So I think just fascinating to see what's happening in this space. So thank you for your support of those individuals and others. And if there's anything we can continue to do to support what's happening at Age Well and with the conference forum, don't hesitate to reach out. So
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Well, thank you everyone for taking time out your busy schedule to listen in on this really fascinating conversation about aging and how technology is becoming an enabler and a differentiator and supporting us as we move through our senior years as well. As always, if you enjoyed this discussion, please share this with your friends, family, colleagues, even folks you don't really like that much. I think everybody could benefit from this very timely discussion as well. And until next time, take care, happy holidays, and God bless.
Thank you so much for listening to Straight Outta Health IT. We hope you enjoyed today's guest. For more unfiltered dialogue of healthcare leaders and influencers, be sure to tune in next week. For the show notes, transcripts, and resources, please visit Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite streaming platform. We invite you to give us feedback by reaching out to Christopher Cunny on LinkedIn, just searching for Straight Outta Health IT, and you'll find us. We are constantly having live discussions about diverse topics in the industry.